Content warning. This series will discuss topics that may bring up painful experiences for you. Please take the time to surround yourself with good medicines. If need be, pause the playback and go for a walk, stretch, have a glass of water, and come back to the show when you feel comfortable. Welcome to the Métis Speaker Series. I'm your host, Darrell Fox. On this podcast series, we will be exploring learning, healing, and rebuilding within the Métis community. Our goal is to create awareness of and generate discussion about Métis issues, as well as how to heal from and move forward in a healthy way. We hope to reduce Métis invisibility in BC through the personal stories from our Métis community members. This show is brought to you by Métis Nation BC and Jelly Marketing.
I couldn't help myself. You gave me everything.
Darrell, thank you so much for being here. This is a real honor, and we can actually jump right in. So, Darrell Fox, thank you for being here. For those folks that just by chance have not heard of Terry Fox, they haven't driven through Coquitlam, they haven't maybe even lived in Canada very long. That could be one case, or someone that maybe by chance just had yet to have the opportunity to be a part of a Terry Fox run. Who is Terry Fox?
Yeah, do we have an hour? No, I'm lucky enough to be Terry's not so younger brother. And I was given the incredible gift of being part of the Marathon of Hope in 1980 and traveled with Terry during the tender age of 17. And I witnessed a miracle. I witnessed Terry run a marathon every day on an artificial leg. Terry was diagnosed with osteosarcoma at the age of 18. When he was diagnosed, he had never heard of the word cancer. So it was a rude awakening to see not only what he experienced, but what others around him experienced going through chemotherapy treatments. And he made a promise at that time of his life that if he ever walked out of the cancer wards alive, he would never forget those he had left behind. And that's where this crazy idea of running across the country surfaced. And it took over 5,000 kilometers of preparation, training for the Marathon of Hope, and on April 12th, 1980, Terry started the Marathon of Hope, and he ran 3,339 miles during the Marathon of Hope. The nation embraced him. He had a goal of raising $1 from every Canadian, and before he passed away in June of 1981, he realized that goal, but didn't actually finish the run. He had to stop in Thunder Bay because the cancer that had claimed his leg 3 years earlier returned. And so that was a devastating moment for the nation and for us as a family. But Terry, said on that day that if I'm ever able to get out there again, I will. But if I'm not able to finish the Marathon of Hope, it better continue without me. And that's what's happened over the last 42 years. Canadians have continued the tradition of raising money for cancer research, and we've raised over $850 million for cancer research over the last 42 years. Pretty cool.
It's amazing. So I'm a little brother. I got two older brothers. So give me the perspective of what was going on for you. I imagine you were in high school at the time in Coquitlam.
Yes, yeah. I was at Port Coquitlam Senior Secondary. It was my final year of high school. I got a get out of school free card, so that's what excited me about being a part of the Marathon of Hope. I got to get out of school, but little did I know what lay for me out there on the road, and to witness not only myself personally watch Terry run every day, I witnessed a nation watch him, and that was quite the experience. I am Terry's younger brother, and I growing up with him, I always looked up to him. He was pretty average in every way, and that when we talk about Terry Fox, that's how we always start the conversation, saying like Terry. I mean, we tend to put him on a pedestal, but he wouldn't want to be there. He was pretty average in every way. He was average in terms of athletic ability and on an educational level, but he always tried his very best. That's one of the things that Terry Fox had in abundance, was just never give up attitude. And he just took it to another level when he was diagnosed with cancer, and he's proven that to me that limitations are self-imposed, that we can do anything we want if we set our goals high, and that's what I try to adhere to at this time with my life.
It's amazing. So going back in time, taking the DeLorean back there, when we see all those, news clips and video shots of him running, are you running behind him at these things? Are you in the vehicle? What were you doing as a 17,
Yeah, well,
18
I
year
think I actually ran further than Terry. So
old? There you go. Come on.
he was running straight where I was zigzagging, collecting donations. Not true. Not true at all, actually. I spent most of the time in the van trying to catch up on sleep. I mean, we were up every morning at 4:30. Like for anybody that's early, but for a 17-year-old, not a very happy camper. But we followed Terry's lead. He was getting up every morning at 4:30, and he wasn't sitting in the van. He was out there running a marathon. So kind of put things in perspective for me. But yeah, the days were long. It would take him. He'd run a lot differently today if he had the technology that people run on today. But he had to, if you've seen Terry run, he had to take that extra hop on his good leg in order to allow his artificial leg to swing through. So it was a lot more effort and a lot more time to run a mile. So with breaks, and he would take a 3-hour break from 9 to 12 during the day. He'd usually finish running about anywhere between 3 and 5 p.m. And then it was off to a community to share his story, because the goal was to raise more money. So he needed an audience, and he needed to share and inspire people to give. So at the end of the day, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, I was exhausted. Like I was completely drained, and yet again, I wasn't running. And then somehow, some way, he got up the next morning and did it all over again, and he did it for 143 days in a row. Defies logic. It was a miracle. That's what I witnessed in 1980, a miracle. And it's kind of cool to be able to talk about it 42 years later, and the story still resonates because it's true. You don't need to exaggerate the Terry Fox story. It's
No.
pretty real and true just the way it is.
And I want to get some behind the scenes that we wouldn't normally get. What were you eating on the road? What was kind of the fuel for the team?
Well, no energy bars back then.
Power bars. Remember those? They came out in the
None of
late
that
80s.
stuff. No. But Terry recognized that he needed to consume mass quantities of food. So, but nothing much in to start the day, because he was about to run 12 miles in the morning. But as soon as he took that 3-hour break that started at 9 o'clock, that's where food would be placed in front of him, and he would consume as much as he could. Doug Allward, who is Terry's best friend, who drove the van during the Marathon of Hope. I was the third member that joined up in St. John, New Brunswick. Doug was given the title loosely of cook, but he was terrible. He's the only person out there that can do damage to canned beans, which he did. So I was always putting up my hand hoping that there would be a donated meal at a restaurant around the corner, because otherwise we would have, and Terry would have starved. Businesses, restaurants were so generous. They always offered Terry free food, and he ate whatever was put before him. So there was no limit to what he would consume during the day.
It's amazing. A lot of probably learnings and discoveries along the way. And one of them I want to talk about is the discovery of your family's Métis lineage. Tell me about that discovery for you.
Well, yeah, that has been a journey in itself, and I think it adds just another level to this incredible story. And it originates with Terry's grandma, Mary Ann Gladue, or Marianne Wark, or Grandma Wark, who played such an integral role in our family. It is a large family on that side, on my mom's side. There are many grandchildren of Grandma Wark, and she was there at every birth. She was there at every marriage. She was there when things weren't so good, and that was the case with Terry being diagnosed with cancer. Grandma was there every step of the way. To look at her, you would know that she was Indigenous. She has that look in her, but she kept it a secret. We didn't know because she was very uncomfortable with talking about her early years, because her early years were spent on Turtle Mountain Reservation in North Dakota, and she was very uncomfortable about speaking about it. But we always knew, and my mom always would recognize the First Nations piece. She carried a feather with her at all times in her purse. It was a symbol of that. But again, we weren't allowed to communicate or talk about it. And it was only after many years after Grandma passed away that I cannot take credit for this. It was actually a cousin of mine that wanted to investigate and pursue it further, and we realized that here we are. We were Métis all along, and I think it helps to explain the personality of Terry Fox. Many of the core values that we identify ourselves as Métis were very much a part of who Terry was. And again, because of this incredible role that Mary Ann Gladue played in our lives, it's not a coincidence that Terry was Métis. I think he had this incredible desire to run across our country, across the nation, across the land, and I think it's kind of cool, and it's added a lot of layers to my life. And I've said how I'm not young anymore, but to investigate and find out more about my history is something I treasure immensely.
Yeah, we have a lot to be thankful for. Your cousin, it was my aunt when my grandpa passed away. My aunt did a, research, and that's where we discovered our Métis lineage. It's very exciting. I'm glad for people like that in our lives. For you
Yeah,
now,
it's cool.
this discovery of the Métis lineage and what it means to be Métis, how has that impacted the Terry Fox Foundation and your operations every year?
Yeah, well, the foundation. So we as family members are all considered members of the Terry Fox Foundation, and then there's also the Terry Fox Research Institute. So the story and our involvement is being passed down to the next generation. So we all have children now, and they are being active in this identity, and the foundation embraces it. It's still relatively new. It's recent, but last year, for example, was so awesome to feature Terry's Métis heritage on the Terry Fox Foundation T-shirt, of which there were like 65,000 sold. It was a huge success, and this is during again COVID times, but people wanted that T-shirt, and they appreciate the story in it. I see it on a weekly basis how Terry Fox, we call them Terry Foxers, our supporters and organizers are continually talking about this and adding this to the story they share when they're out there encouraging people to participate in the Terry Fox run. They're talking about Terry's Métis heritage, and it's just recently with the National Indigenous Day, First Nations Day, on the longest day, that was something that surfaced by the foundation. So we embrace it, and we want to put it out there just how important this is to our history now.
And this shirt from last year, and those that maybe didn't get one of them, how did you acknowledge it, or how did you involve the Métis-ness on that shirt?
Yeah, well, we used beadwork, which is obviously something that's very important to Métis, and we also chose two flowers, one that represented North Dakota, and a flower that represented our birth province of Winnipeg, and we featured that in the design, and of course Terry was there prominently as well, and we also included the Métis language on the shirt as well. So it included English, French, and Métis, which was kind of cool. And so and again, it was so well received. It is. I'm not exaggerating here. It is my favorite T-shirt.
So,
it states just how important it is to us as a family.
and also, I noticed on the statues that are in front of BC Place, the statues that Douglas Copeland made, there's a plaque there now. Is that correct? Acknowledging.
Yes, that plaque was unveiled earlier this year, and yeah, that was quite exciting. I mean, we've enjoyed our relationship, this new relationship that we have, or I have with Métis Nation BC. It's been a wonderful few years of getting to know each other, and they've been so welcoming and so helpful. Because again, I didn't grow up with this understanding of my Métis heritage, so I'm learning, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand, the culture, because I don't, and so it's a really steep learning curve, but I really value how welcoming Métis Nation BC has been to us, and it's a relationship that I think will continue to develop over the years, and it's an important one for us.
So Douglas Copeland, who made those statues at BC Place, did the shirts for this year, and I ordered a few. I've got a
Yes.
long sleeve. I've got a running shirt. The problem is I didn't wear it today though, because if I sit in a unique way, Terry's face does different things, and I didn't want to freak you out as I sat here and his face wrinkled and maybe like he looked mad at you or something. So I didn't because
That's
so I
cool. No, Doug's cool. If you know anything about Doug Copeland, he's a pretty clever, brilliant, creative guy. So, and we've enjoyed that relationship. It actually goes back 18 years now to 2004, where Doug out of the blue approached me, and to be honest, I had never heard of Doug Copeland. Oops, but quickly realized what a talented author and artist he was, and he was researching for a book, Souvenir of Canada 2. He'd already published one book, and it was a collection of artifacts and photo essays of things that define us as Canadians, and he wanted to include a Canadian in book 2, and he realized that there was only one Canadian that no one would argue with, and that was Terry Fox. So he asked if he could spend time with the collection, the artifacts, and so we gave him the key, so to speak, and he came back and he featured in his book a photo of the sock that Terry wore on his artificial leg and never took off during the run. It became a symbol for him of continuing on. And Doug also came back after visiting the artifacts with a stern lecture to us to say that we needed to do something to protect the collection. And then he also felt that there was an opportunity for us to work together and do something more. And it was in 2005 for the 25th anniversary that Doug authored the book Terry, and it included images of artifacts from the collection, along with Doug's brilliant way of articulating and sharing the story behind those artifacts. And it was a huge bestseller, and it was the beginning of this relationship that continues today. Doug designed, as we've mentioned earlier, the Terry Fox Plaza at BC Place, and just recently, here he is this year, producing the Terry Fox Run design, which was hugely successful when we released it in
I
April.
took a photo of me in my shirt just to put up, with Michael Bublé and Moira from Schitt's Creek and the others that have decided to, display themselves wearing it in black and white. But, there's just a few of us that like wearing it. So it was a great shirt. I love the design. With that, and those that haven't heard of Douglas Copeland, if you've ever used the term millennial or Gen Y or Gen Z, Douglas Copeland coined the phrase Generation X many years ago, and he is the the originator of that term, which we've since have used countless times and in many ways to describe different generations.
Yeah, he's, again, I could go on for quite some time, explaining how brilliant he is, and it's kind of neat whenever I have the rare opportunity to get together with him. I'm a bit of a sponge trying to take in his creativity and his brilliance for all things, that are happening in this world. He really has a different way of sharing his perspective on things, and so he's a kind of cool guy to hang around with.
So I want to talk about Betty Fox's mom, Marianne, and the influence she had on Terry and you in kind of the early years. What was it like? What was she like in your life? What are things you noticed about her? What did you remember about her?
Yeah, every what was fast. So I'm gonna go back to we were born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I thought my dad was pretty courageous to at a young age to move his family from Winnipeg and the comfort of being close to family to the West Coast, because he worked for CN Rail and he wasn't happy working in the Winnipeg winter, so he wanted a new home for his family. So that resulted in us having to every summer or whenever we could, we would head back to Winnipeg, and then also to Melita, Manitoba, where Grandma lived, and we would spend a week with the Foxes in Winnipeg, and we'd spend a week or so in Melita, Manitoba, and it just felt real natural for me to be there in Melita, like small town, very small town, but Grandma was Terry. Terry was Grandma. When I think about stubbornness and courageous and overcoming challenges and being humble and giving, all these words describe Terry, but they also describe my grandma. She was a very, very important person in my life too. So having worked for the foundation and now for the Terry Fox Research Institute, whenever I was in Winnipeg, Manitoba, I always had to add an extra day to make a trip down to see my grandma. And it was difficult at times because she lived in a smoke-filled environment, so she smoked like a chimney. But boy, she could cook. She could bake and she could cook and she could take care of you, and she cheated at cards too. But I valued those visits. They were so important because I knew I was hanging around a real important mentor in my life who was teaching me, good things about how to live a life and how to treat other people. And so I think, that was Grandma to a T. And I really don't think it was a coincidence that Terry would passed away on her birthday, which is very interesting that they had that happen. And then Grandma passed away on September 12th, 2001. So 9/11, the day after, and it was unbelievable that here we were as a family. So that weekend was also the weekend of the Terry Fox run. And where were we, that weekend? We were in Melita, Manitoba. For Saturday was a funeral, and Sunday our whole family was there to participate in the Terry Fox run. So again, more than just a coincidence that happened, that it just speaks to the connection that Grandma had to all members of her family, including Terry. So she's always there. Like I miss, along with missing my mom immensely, I miss my grandma and the special relationship. And I think I'm just speaking of one grandchild as one. I know she had the similar relationship with all her grandchildren. It was unique and special, and we cherish her immensely.
That's awesome. So Darrell, I know that you said you're much like me and many others who are just discovering their Métis-ness, their Métis heritage, their Métis lineage, and you're getting introduced and welcomed into this amazing family, this amazing nation. Maybe give me some of the attributes that you're seeing, or some of the things that stand out for you that really excite you about being Métis, and some of the discoveries you've made.
Well, I mean, it's cool to find out that in the late 1800s we were buffalo hunters. Like we were there are members of our family that were part of the provisional government of Louis Riel. Like it's cool that we go back to that, but it kind of makes sense because of, again, how I think as a family we find that we're more comfortable outside than inside. We're used to, Terry ran across the country. I have an incredible interest in being out there too. I ran for most of my life, and now this is a bike jersey. Now I ride a bike. I just have this need to be out on the land. I have this need to be out in nature, climbing a mountain or doing something outside. And I think that speaks to what's inside me and what has been passed down in terms of that. Even though it wasn't shared verbally by my grandma, there was something that was being passed on to me, and which was passed on to her. And I think it originates from the land and being part of that process. So it's something I need to explore more. I'm trying to identify certain members of the family and see the lineage there and what they were up to as well. But really need it's gonna be a bit of a process, and it's gonna take time, and I got to fit it in. But I'm certainly going to because it helps explain who I was, and in finding out who I was, I'm also learning more about Terry and what he accomplished as well.
So Darrell, in all these experiences, as you discover your background, your lineage, and being Métis, what are the things that have stood out for you? What are the things that have most excited you about the Métis world?
Well, for me, and maybe I've articulated this in some of the questions you asked earlier. I'm at a point where I want to try and understand why. Life is about answering that question: why are we here? And especially with what I've been part of, this gift of witnessing the Marathon of Hope, which for 42 years I've been trying to answer the question: how did Terry run? How did he accomplish this feat? And I just feel, being Métis and understanding more of my history is helping to put the puzzle together, the pieces together of that puzzle. And it's really been a fascinating journey that I've been on, and I'm very new. I'm not going to try and pretend that this has been with me all my life. It hasn't. I found it late, and I found it late because I'm fascinated by it. And I guess this is part of the process of getting older. You get a little bit wiser, and you have it interesting in knowing more about your background and your origin. So, but just the understanding that we were buffalo hunters in the 1800s, and the family. There are ancestors of our family that were part of the Louis Riel provisional government. That's just cool because it seems to fit with who we are as a family. We wanted to traverse. We wanted to get out of Manitoba. We wanted to get to a different climate. And what did Terry choose as a way of furthering his desire to give back and to help people was to traverse the land and to bring people together. And I think that's really what I value about Métis Nation BC and the Métis people is they are a family. It's a large extended family, and they really bring you into it. And they're very welcoming. Any person that I come in contact with who's part of Métis Nation BC, I feel like I've known them forever. That's the feeling I have. They're genuine, they're sincere, and they love their family and love being part of the nation. And so I'm really enjoying this experience. It's added a huge dimension to my life, and I'm just looking forward to what the future holds as I continue to pursue it.
That's awesome. And one other great collab between the Terry Fox Foundation and Métis Nation BC is the sash. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was really cool. I wish that was my idea, Darian. It wasn't my idea. But the sash is a very important piece in Métis Nation. And so to recognize Terry with a sash was really wonderful, and it represents Terry's favorite colors. Red and blue are featured in the sash, and we actually put an image of Terry on the sash as well, running and with mountains in the background, which I think is awesome. So it was exciting to be part of that process along with other fellow family members to produce the sash and to see how well it's been received as well. It's just been exciting.
It's very cool. And tell me about you and how you spend your days now. And I noticed you got a bike jersey on, not a running jersey. So tell us about that and what your
Yeah, well,
future holds.
I like Terry. Hated running. Hate running. I hate it. I hate it. Terry hated running too, but he loved the challenge of it. I love challenges. And so most of my life, 30 plus years of it, or have been devoted to running. But not because of running related injuries, but because of a basketball injury, tearing an ACL a couple of times, I can't run anymore. So I found the bike about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's funny. I at one point I ran 9.5 years without taking a day off. I ran every day at least 5K. Now I can't put 2 days together. So it's strange how the body tends to wear down. But I can bike, and I like to ride because again I'm outside. I love to be outside, and I can cover vast amount more territory than I could ever running. So, and I love, gravel riding is awesome too. And there's so many wonderful places out here in Chilliwack where I can find Forest Service roads and get out there and hear nothing other than nature. It's really cool. And then also we've added a fundraising component to. We've added, obviously there is the annual Terry Fox Run, but we've created the Terry Fox Ride of Hope. And it started actually 7 years ago when a friend of mine, where we were planning to do the Mount Terry Fox Trek. There's a mountain just outside of Valemount named after Terry, and it was a fundraiser, a hike up the mountain. And Brandon and I said, well, we're going up there. Why don't we ride there? So we actually started in Sun Peaks, on Sun Peaks Mountain. And it was the 35th anniversary, so I said, well, why don't we ride 350K? So that's what we did. We rode 350 kilometers from Sun Peaks, just outside of Kamloops, to Mount Terry Fox, just outside of Valemount. Fortunately, 4 other riding buddies caught wind of our idea, and they joined us. And they thought of, maybe we should bring some food. Maybe that might be a good idea. Maybe we need a support vehicle. If not, I think we'd still be out there riding. So we were not prepared for it. And we enjoyed the experience so much that we thought, okay, maybe this is something we can do every year. And so every year we've been doing the Terry Fox Ride of Hope. We added 10K for the 36th anniversary, and we did 360 kilometers. There was about 20 of us that covered that distance, working together. It's about coming together, helping one another. And we raised $50,000. Last year was the 41st anniversary, so we did, guess what, 410 kilometers in a day, and we raised almost $90,000. This year we're dropping it back to 360K, so gives us a chance to finish in daylight. It was pretty close last year, but it's just a wonderful experience, people coming together, and that'll be July 9th. We'll be starting at Terry Fox Hometown Square in Port Coquitlam and finding our way out to Chilliwack. So looking forward to that. And there are other rides that we're starting out in other cities across the country, including Victoria. And also there'll be a ride in northern Okanagan and Vernon and Armstrong this weekend, which I'll be participating in as well.
It's amazing. Now, just to track it, Terry Fox, we have Terry Fox Plaza, there's a mountain named after Terry Fox. There's Terry Fox Secondary School in Coquitlam. What else is there named after Terry Fox that you're aware of, maybe, that you could share?
What's interesting, Darian, is that's not part of our mandate. If we went looking for recognition, I'm sure there could be so many things named after Terry, but Terry wasn't about recognition. It was about raising another dollar for cancer research. So any of the recognition activities that come our way are because people want to continue to recognize Terry, and it continues to happen. 42 years removed from the Marathon of Hope. There's statues across the country. I think there's 11 statues. There's the Terry Fox Coast Guard ship. There are 13 schools named after Terry. There are so many roads named after Terry. Excited that there will be a new mural on University Avenue in downtown Toronto. So that will be unveiled probably next year, but we're very excited by that activity too, because that was such a big day for Terry when he ran down University Avenue to Nathan Phillips Square, where 10,000 people greeted him. So to have a mural there is pretty significant, considering that a lot of the funds that we raised end up being on that street. University of Toronto, Princess Margaret Hospital, Sick Kids is also on University Avenue. So it just seems like the right place to have a large image of Terry running. So very excited by that. But this is something we do as a family. We come together when there are proposals to recognize Terry, and we discuss them, and in most cases we certainly give a green light, and we're very active and engaged in the process of recognizing Terry when it happens.
It's amazing. So I'm gonna come up with one, and this is for Hope, who I think is listening, who is the CMO of Tim Hortons Canada. You've done Tim Biebs. We want some Terry bits. We want some Terry Fox Tim bits, or a Terry Fox coffee, right? Can we do that, Darrell?
I got my Tim's right over there, actually. So that's how I start the day.
So if Hope came to you with this concept, do you think the family would say yes if we ran this by her?
I think we would give that one a good think. I mean, for us, it's about ensuring in terms of where there's a product involved, the concept involves having to make sure all proceeds come to TFF, to the Terry Fox. I'm using an acronym, Terry Fox Foundation, but if that was satisfied, I'm sure we'd give it a good look.
Yeah, little Terry running around the box, right? Some imagery there. We can make it happen. I mean, if Justin Bieber gets a box, why not Terry Fox? So, Darrell, it's been a real honor to have you on the show. Thanks so much for sharing so many great stories and just kind of where you're coming from and about your, the heritage and the family and what it's been like to join this incredible nation, this incredible family.
Great. We really enjoyed the time. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us this episode on Métis Voices, and we'll see you next time. This has been the Métis Speaker Series podcast. I'm Darren Kovacs. Thanks to Métis Nation BC for making this possible, with funding provided by the Civil Forfeiture Office's Indigenous Healing Stream. You can listen to all of our episodes, learn more about the podcast, and sign up to the Métis Nation of BC newsletter to stay up to date on Métis news at métispodcastseries.ca. You can find out more about the music we're playing by Love Life by visiting SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/lovelifeofficial, LUVLYF official, and link in the show notes for your convenience. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast listening device. See you again soon. Mina Kawapa Mitten. Thank you, Marcy, for listening.